Welcome to the Core Women Podcast, the place for women entrepreneurs, authors, and self-starters looking to build community and gain valuable insights through expert interviews with women at the top of their game. Join your host, podcaster, producer, expert coach, entrepreneur, and author, Dr. Summer Watson, as she aims to inspire and empower you through these candid conversations. Lean in and embrace the journey. It's time to start the show. Here's your host, Dr. Summer Watson.
Welcome to the Core Women Podcast, where we will explore the journey of Kate Rose, who is a therapist, relationship expert, spiritual intuitive, and astrologer who combines her knowledge of the stars with her therapeutic expertise to help clients clarify their purpose and overcome blocks that prevent them from living the life they are destined to live. She is the author of Written in the Stars, The Astrology of Soulmate, Karmic, and Twin Flame Relationships, and You Only Fall in Love 3 Times. Kate has an MS in clinical art therapy and regularly writes for publications like YourTango, Elephant Journal, and her newsletter, Unedited. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you so much, Summer. It is absolutely a pleasure to be here with you today.
It is a pleasure to have you on the Core Women Podcast. So as we jump into this interview, my first question is, if you were to describe your journey in one word to this point, what would that word be and why?
It would be unplanned. I laughed when you even said that because I can honestly say that there is not a single thing in my life that I planned that had worked out, and nothing that I'm currently enjoying in my life that I had planned for. So unplanned is really probably my personal theme for my life.
Awesome. I haven't had that one before. Unplanned.
Unplanned. Yes.
Well, I cannot wait to get into the rest of this interview and see how that works. Even that word, unplanned, right? So what comes out of this? So
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about your passion for bringing astrology and therapy together and how this practice developed.
In a lot of ways, it seems probably a little bit bizarre. You're thinking about therapy, thinking about astrology, almost these two separate entities. And really, when I first started working with adults and helping them kind of figure out what is my life purpose, what am I kind of supposed to do, why maybe do I feel unfulfilled, I realized that I could ask them about anything in their life, and it really wouldn't be as much of a greater indicator as if I just asked about their romantic relationship, because the romantic relationship seemed to be the point where we can't really lie to ourselves. We can't really just keep working to achieve success like we could in our career. So it ended up really becoming this great barometer for where we are. But then that kind of started the bigger picture of, what do our relationships mean? What's the purpose of them? What do we all go through? And then that led into the 3 loves of our life, which led into the astrology, because everybody was like, but how do I know what I actually have to work on? How do I know what relationship I'm in? How do I know what I need to do? And we can talk all day, but for most of us, we need to kind of see it right in front of us. And so that's where this astrology component really came in, where no matter what we went through in our childhood or a wound or even a particular romantic relationship, we can see that reflective in the astrology. So not only does it give us confirmation for what we've been through, maybe those unplanned moments in life, but it also gives us a clearer picture of, okay, if I want to change X, Y, or Z, I can focus on this.
Yeah, I love that you start with relationships, and our journey is impacted by the relationships that we have had throughout our lives, right?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
it's funny because there's one thing I can clearly remember with my husband in that when we're talking about relationships, and I'm like, well, that doesn't happen, between such and such, blah, blah, blah. We've had that conversation. And I always say, well, our relationship is defined so differently and has different variables and factors in it than any other relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that you say that about relationships, about starting at that point, because it does create a lot of great conversation regarding conditioning, beliefs, values, goals, our self-worth. Absolutely. So I really appreciate how your evolution brought astrology and therapy together. And as you described that, it didn't sound strange. It
No.
sounded like, aha, she's onto something. Okay. So explain how astrology influences soulmate, karmic, and twin flame relationships. Dive more deeply into that.
Okay, so what I always tell people when I speak with them is that this type of astrology, which is included in Written in the Stars, is not going to tell people when they're going to get rich. It's not going to tell them when they're going to get married. What it's going to do is it's really kind of under that classification of genealogical astrology, which means you are literally kind of going deep into your genealogy, into what your parents went through, what they carried, that generational karma, and you're getting more clarity on it. So by looking at this type of astrology and in the relationships, there are specific astrological indicators of the soulmate, the karmic, and the twin flame. The soulmate is usually identified in that there's a lot of similarities, which can even come through, let's say, if we have the same Saturn sign. The karmic relationship usually is very indicative of, let's say, the wounding or the parent that, let's say, we had the most problematic relationship with. Their astrology chart might be almost identical. So you're going to see a lot of repetition from parents in the karmic. And then in the twin flame, we're going to see in the astrology chart a lot of the North Node, which represents our fate. We're going to see a lot of Venus, which represents not just love, but our love language, how we need and want to and even express love. So by being able to identify these placements, not only is it giving more clarity for the direction of your relationship or which type of relationship, let's say, you want to manifest or attract into your life, but it's also going to kind of give you those signs, because so many of us, those childhood wounds, it's not like we can just write them all down and it stays as is. There's so much that the more we learn, the more we grow, we feel safer. And so we realize something that we've never realized before. And that's what all of this can be able to help people identify, because ultimately it's that idea of when we are on that journey to become our healthier, better self, then not only is our romantic relationship positively affected, but every facet of our life and then the lives of those that we touch.
Well, that makes sense, Kate. All this makes sense, right? Because really where you're coming from is understanding self.
Yes.
That impacts the rest of our relationships. But, when you talk about the karmic and you talk about that generational trauma of sorts, that's seated right in there.
So in looking at a lot of the karmic relationships, one, like let's say that your mother left or your father wasn't able, he had an addiction, wasn't able to love you, then literally you're going to attract partners who have the same Venus sign as your parents because you're still seeking that love from someone else, versus, let's say, the technical term, reparenting your inner child and giving it to yourself. But that generational karma really resides in that South Node, which has this beautiful description of the soul's undoing, but which really represents a lot of the pain and the hurt and everything that we have to go through. But even generationally, it can be, are we going to choose the same type of partner or relationship that our parents or grandparents did? Are we going to be held back by certain beliefs? Are we going to choose someone that looks right, but meanwhile might not actually be right for us?
It really helps that person tap into more of who they are at a deeper level. So enriching. I love this stimulating conversation. Okay, so question for you. I asked you about the soulmate, karmic, and twin flame relationships. Now, how does this progress into you only fall in love 3 times? What is the significance of this concept, and how does astrology play a role? I'm gathering soulmate, karmic, and twin flame, but it could be more. It could be different. The floor is yours.
So, thank you, Summer. So in this case, and this is really kind of what led to Written in the Stars, is the idea that whether we fall in love 3 times, whether we fall in love 8 times or more, ultimately we only have these 3 types of love in our life. We have the soulmate relationship, which can tend to be, very similar to us, very easy in the beginning, but which if we stayed in, we wouldn't maybe necessarily know our truth or who we are. The karmic relationship is passionate and exciting, but also toxic and unhealthy to help us learn those childhood wounds. And then the twin flame, just because it seems like this myth that wow, we could actually be loved for who we are and we'd be safe to receive. It seems so incredible, but that really is what's kind of that pinnacle of the romantic journey. But these three loves also really represent three phases of our own human development that we go through, as far as, let's say, the child phase, the rebellious teenager, and the healing adult. So with all of this, these three loves are loves that we go through in our life as we grow and change. Interestingly, in all the research, most previous generations, like grandparents and great grandparents, they stayed in their soulmate relationship. That was it. There was not very, I think maybe I've counted maybe 2 or 3 grandparents from that generation that have actually been in a karmic relationship. But most of the generations have really stayed in the soulmate relationship. So I think it also speaks to how we're evolving as a society, and that we're becoming safer to be able to explore our truth, that we're getting more tools in order to be able to heal our childhood wounds, and that we actually do believe that we are worthy of a healthy reciprocal love where we're not sacrificing our dreams or with someone who's just like our father, that we can actually grow and heal and have an effect on what we end up creating in our life.
Absolutely. And it sounds like both of these books are incredible tools to help people really discover those three loves, the soulmate, the karmic, the twin flame relationships, and really understanding
Yes.
our journey, what's pointing us in the direction of a certain love, and then also how to heal ourselves to develop different types of relationships and not just bring that trauma, that generational
Mhm.
trauma, or those decisions based on generation after generation to the current day, to the present, where we have the opportunity to change it with knowledge and insight and intuition.
Yes, it's so many people when I speak with them, they either carry around guilt from their past romantic relationships, or they have fear, or they don't even want to talk about it because they view it as such a mistake. And oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed that I did that, or I believed that at one point. But if we can understand, one, we have these three loves, we have these three phases of development, and that the reason why we had to go through all of it is because of what we experienced in childhood, but that actually our soul chose this long before we became aware of it. I feel like it not only helps people release a lot of that guilt and those negative feelings associated with sometimes a rocky past, which most of us have it to a degree at least, but it also brings in more acceptance and confirmation that everyone, no matter where you are, you're on the right path.
Well, this is so helpful. And I know this is going to be so supportive for so many people. And it's a unique perspective for sure.
Yes.
So, my question for you then is, because it is so unique, where was that light bulb of aha? There's something different. We can approach this differently. There's a different mindset, a different depth of knowledge, so to speak, where we can bring something into this picture for better understanding of our relationships. Where was that light bulb for you?
I think I had a couple light bulb moments. So
Okay.
the
Yeah.
first light bulb for even this aspect of the three loves, which really birthed everything else, was really trying to make sense and understand my own journey. That aspect of unplanned means that I did get divorced. It was never something I planned on. I have gone through things I would have absolutely said that will never happen. I would never do any of these things. And then life goes unplanned and you find yourself in a variety of situations. And so I was trying to make sense. At that time, I was writing so much with Elephant Journal Online, so many articles, really exposing my heart and soul in all I experienced. And it was honestly a quiet night. And I started thinking about myself and thinking about people that I knew and people I had been with. And I was like, wow, like we really only have these three types of love. And that was the light bulb moment, but it was also the beginning of the journey to really understanding what that means, what that looks like, and how much of the collective is actually going through that. I've always practiced astrology. I've always believed in it. I often joke I was reading astrology books of my mother's. When I was younger, I had no idea even really what it meant, but I remember being fascinated. I think it was the sun signs book when I was about 10. So it was always something I enjoyed doing. And at that point, I was writing moon articles for Elephant Journal. And I started having people like want to be like, oh, can I send you my chart and see what you think? And then I would, of course, ask them about their relationships. And I started realizing and seeing patterns come out. Part of me was like, how has no one ever realized this before? Because it jumped off the pages at me. And at that point, I was like, oh, so it's not just these three loves that we choose to go through in our life, but that we're meant to go through in our life, that it's really a part of our development, our journey in this lifetime. It floored me. Sometimes I would still even get surprised, even karmic partners. So many times people send me astrology charts across, and they could have 3-4 karmic partners and their charts are almost identical. Almost identical. They're literally dating the same person over and over again, all because of the relationship with their parent, and had no idea.
Wow. Well, this is really cool. I have to tell you, growing up, I used to love Teen Magazine, Cosmopolitan, Mademoiselle, and I picked them up because I'm like, okay, I'm going to flip through those pages and find the astrology, and I'd go through the index or the contents, and I was like, okay, where's it at? I got to read it.
Yes. I mean, I think so much of us have like always been kind of drawn to that and seeing that. And it's fascinating because as much as it's seen as like this new age belief, astrology's been around since the dawn of time. It's been around for centuries and centuries. And so I feel like so many of us now, with so much modern modalities and so much technology, I think that's where we're seeing like astrology, meditation, sound baths, like all of these principles that humanity has really always used. I feel like we're kind of tapping into them because we're needing more of that greater connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're looking at different things in a different way. That's what's so beautiful about today. We have so many wonderful options to really understand the way we function, our beliefs, our values. And these books that you offer is another way of doing that. So thank you. We've covered so much. And as we come to the close of the interview, my last question for you, Kate, is if you were to give one tip about overcoming a block that is preventing someone from reaching a goal or the life they envision, what would that tip be?
It would be to listen to their heart and believe in themselves, not the world, not anybody around them, not the statistics, but listen to their heart and begin to believe in themselves, because that is the root of all magic.
Well, thank you, Kate, for joining me on the Core Women podcast today.
Oh, thank you so much, Summer. It was wonderful.
Absolutely. You can follow Kate Rose on Facebook at Words of Kate Rose Club, on Instagram and Twitter at Words of Kate Rose, and at wordsofkaterose.com. You can also find her books on Amazon.
Thank you for joining us on the Core Women podcast with Dr. Summer Watson. We're so glad you're here and would love to connect more with you. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Core Women, and on Twitter at Core Women 1. For more about Core Women and Dr. Watson, visit corewomen.com. Want more support and resources for amazing women like you? Great! Join Dr. Watson and Jen Fontanilla at the Life, Love, and Money Collective, a Core Women production that aids in understanding the key traits that might be getting in the way of living a life that you are absolutely passionate about. Connect with Summer and Jen and find out more at thelifeloveandmoney.com.